Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Everything is Black and White podcast. Andrew Musk for you. Hope you guys are all doing well. Once again, I am coming to you with a solo episode, but goodness me, it is an episode I think you guys will want to hear because you might have thought the season is over and the summer is upon us and we can have a nice little break until the drama of the transfer window. But oh no, this is Newcastle United that we are talking about. And today, Tuesday, the 27th of May, the club announced that Paul Mitchell, their sporting director, is to leave the club by mutual consent by the end of next month, which is June. It is a bit of news that I didn't see coming. They've either managed to keep it extremely quiet or it's happening very suddenly. And regardless of when Paul Mitchell's exit was agreed, there are several questions now to be asked. Before we get into that, just a quick reminder to please like and follow the podcast wherever you're joining us from. If you're on the YouTube channel, do hit thumbs up and hit subscribe. If you're on the audio only channel, please leave us a rating and review. And a huge thanks to NordVPN for their support over the season. You've still got a chance to get a very special discounted offer and sign up for a plan which is great value for money, protects your devices, and comes with a 30-day money-back guarantee. Hit the link in the podcast description box and sign up now. Right, Paul Mitchell then. Less than a year at Newcastle United, and he is to go. He's to go without making a major signing, which is what he was brought in to do. When he arrived last summer at Newcastle United, it was seen by many, myself included, as a massive coup. He had, on the surface, done really well at Tottenham, Southampton, Monaco, and came with a fantastic reputation of signing talented players. Slightly different to what Dan Ashworth was known for, kind of a man who was more of a systems man. And while he had an eye for a player, we were expecting a sizable shift when it came to Paul Mitchell's approach. But it just didn't happen. Now, I think everyone thought it was down to PSR and the restrictions that Newcastle United were battling. 3 windows, 2 under Mitchell, and United haven't signed a single player who elevates this first team. Whatever the reason, Mitchell does not leave with a legacy. His time, I think, for many, will be looked back upon as totally forgettable. In fact, many people probably won't look back on it at all. I guess after less than a year in charge, some might argue it's a little bit difficult to make an impact. Others would say there's always a chance to leave your mark. I guess it's somewhere in between. But what is interesting about his departure, probably more than anything, is timing. It comes, of course, after Newcastle United's defeat to Everton on Sunday, but still did enough to qualify for the Champions League. A meeting with the Public Investment Fund, of course, Newcastle's majority owners, happened after that. Questions about whether that had something to do with Paul Mitchell's exit or whether, like I say, it was planned in advance. We don't know what was said. We might never know what was said, but certainly questions to be asked. Now, the summer transfer window is set to be huge for Newcastle United. Eddie Howe may try and play it down, but with the way Newcastle have managed PSR, expecting Newcastle United to sign 2 or 3 top quality players, I don't think is unrealistic. Now, as a sporting director with a large say in that, wouldn't you want to be part of that journey, that next step that takes Newcastle United from Champions League qualifying contenders to hopefully title challengers? And his departure does raise several questions that hopefully we get the answer to in due course. Hinted to it there. Why has he left? Has it got something to do with discussions with the Public Investment Fund, or is it to do with his relationship with Eddie Howe? Now, we were led to believe that Eddie Howe and Mitchell were on good terms. You know, they were singing from the same hymn sheet, which is a stark contrast to that of last summer when Howe, while in Germany with Newcastle United, sat down with the press pack and made his feelings clear about Mitchell and the setup. He raised concerns about what the future would hold. But there was, according to some, now still some friction, even though the majority were led to believe that everything was going swimmingly. They were on the same page. They were thinking in terms of the same targets and the same approach to improving the side. Others would say, well, actually, under the surface, there was still a little bit of friction. Again, hard to know what the truth is. The only people that do know are those involved. Mitchell perhaps looking to sign young talent, which takes time to grow. Howe looking for players who are maybe a bit more ready-made, who can make an impact now. Now, regardless of how their relationship was, it leads on to the next question. And how does Mitchell's exit impact United's summer window? Does it make it easier for Eddie Howe to go out and get the targets that he wants? Because the man who was, for all intended purposes, having a large say is now gone. Newcastle need to hit the ground running, if not in the first 10 days of the summer transfer window, then straight away after it reopens following the World Club Cup. Teams are already making moves. We know Liverpool after Frimpong. We know Man United are closing in on Cunha from Wolves. That's just to name a few. Newcastle United need to go down that same route and try and bring Eddie Howe the players that he wants straight away. Eddie Howe likes to work early on in pre-season with new signings. Fingers crossed he can get them. It is such an important window for Newcastle. We don't have to tell them that. You guys don't need telling. Eddie Howe knows it. Those at board level know it. I genuinely do think 2 or 3 quality signings in the right positions while keeping all their stars, so that's Isak, Bruno, Tonali, Gordon. I think Newcastle United are not too far away from competing for a Premier League title. I genuinely don't think they're that far away at all. Sign the right players, 2 or 3 players. Probably have to spend the best part of maybe 120, 130 million on these players at the very least. And I think keeping everyone fit, barring any stupid suspensions and any sales of their stars, they could really, really surprise people next season. Now, anyhow, after the Everton game, was asked about the transfer window inevitably because it qualified for the Champions League, which is huge to what Newcastle United want to do in the coming years. He said, it's difficult to say on numbers, but I do think it's a window that we have to be active in, and I'm sure we will be. We haven't recruited strongly in 3 windows, and I think eventually that can catch up with you in the end if you continue not to change, because change is an important part of the squad. I think we feel that, and I think we potentially felt that last summer as well. So I think that's why the players have done so well to carry the success through. Yes, it is going to be a big transfer window. So anyhow, they're spelling out straight away, it's going to be a big transfer window. He did say earlier in the week that it might not be a big transfer window in terms of too many changes. You know, it's not going to be revolutionary. I don't think it needs to be. It just needs to be 2 or 3 of the right players to carry Newcastle United to the next level, because they do have a good spine in that squad. They have a list of targets, a small pool of targets that they've scouted and they like. But the question now is whether Mitchell's exit changes this. Now, I don't think it will do. I think the likes of Liam Delap, Brian and Burma, Mark Gee will still be at the top of that list, and Newcastle will still look to bring them in if the money is right. But the big question is, who is leading the negotiations? You know, if they have, as reports suggest, started negotiations with Liam Delap, who was responsible for that? Steve Nixon or Paul Mitchell? If it was Paul Mitchell, what happens now? Does Steve Nixon step up and take over? Again, these are things that need to be asked, and hopefully we get some answers in the not too distant future. I genuinely think that actually allowing Mitchell to go is fine. It is a shock, but it's fine. What Newcastle United cannot afford to happen now is that to be a vacuum while they find his replacement. You know, we can't allow that to happen. They need to ensure, and I'm sure they are doing, that whatever the short-term stop is, that it still works in Newcastle's favour to make sure that this transfer window is the biggest and best possible. His exit can't be used as an excuse. Now, maybe Paul Mitchell's replacement will be even harder to find because Darren Eales, Newcastle's CEO, is also leaving due to ill health. I find it unlikely that Eales would be allowed to appoint a new sporting director just weeks or months before he departs as CEO. Now, there doesn't appear to be a timescale of when Darren Eales will leave. You would think it would probably have to be before the season kicks off. But again, that's just me speculating. I think that would be the right time. You know, this summer feels like the right time. Obviously, he's got to put his health first, but to depart from Newcastle United, having seen them win a cup and get in the Champions League, I mean, you're leaving on a high, but it would seem pretty strange to allow him to appoint a sporting director and then for him to go, because the new CEO might want to bring in their own man and probably will do. Mitchell, interestingly, in a statement to the club or on the club website, references Eales' exit, stating that I'm leaving at a time that is right for me and the club, particularly with Darren Eales, someone who I've worked so closely with in my career, moving on soon. The club is in great hands on and off the pitch, and is in a fantastic position to continue building. I'd like to wish everyone connected with Newcastle United a bright and successful future. Now, is Ears leaving really the main reason for Mitchell's exit? Perhaps. The statement paints an amicable split, and perhaps it is. And once again, it's only those in the room who will really know just how amicable it is. The final question is who replaces Paul Mitchell in his role? Who will be the next sporting director for Newcastle United? I've just said it there. For me, the first thing they need to do is to appoint the new CEO. Then whoever that is works with Eddie Howe and Steve Nixon to get the new sporting director in. For me, that is absolutely key. In the meantime, you can see Steve Nixon stepping up and stepping into the shoes of Paul Mitchell once he leaves. He's Newcastle United's head of recruitment as it is. Handing him more power, at least in the short term, I don't think would be a bad thing, alongside obviously Eddie Howe and Eddie Howe's nephew, Andy, who is the assistant head of first team recruitment. Those seem to have a really strong relationship. Steve Nixon actually likes to work away in the background, but his reputation is really, really strong. He's done a lot of work with Newcastle United's big money signings. He's got a nose for talent. He knows what he's doing. He knows what he's looking at. And he's just a very amicable guy. He's friendly, he's approachable. And having him, not saying Paul Mitchell isn't, of course, but having him working in that role alongside Eddie Howe and Andy Howe might just be the best thing short term. And you're fully backing him to fill that void until they find a new sporting director. Sometimes, though, it is good to have someone who perhaps rocks the boat. I don't know exactly how strong their relationship is, i.e. Nixon and and Eddie Howe's nephew and Eddie Howe, but it seems like they do like to work closely together. But sometimes it is better to have someone who will disagree with you and call it as it is. Now, whether Steve Nixon is the answer long term, could be, I guess. He was touted as a possible option before Paul Mitchell came in last summer. And like I say, his reputation is really, really high. People really value him for his ability to spot a player, his ability to approach players, his ability to kind of just be that calming influence and voice. The players like him. He has had a big part to play in some of Newcastle's most influential signings over the past 4 or 5 years. So he could do that job long term. They could go back in for Dougie Freedman, formerly of Crystal Palace, who United wanted before they got Mitchell on board. That deal didn't work out. He currently works, though, for Al Diriyah in Saudi Arabia, who, by the way, are owned by the Public Investment Fund. They're a second division Saudi Arabian side. That's where he went to. He left Crystal Palace in March. Could he be back on the agenda for Newcastle United? They liked him. They wanted him. They couldn't get him. That's when they went to Paul Mitchell. So it'll be interesting to see if interest in Freedman still remains. I suspect if it does, that deal might be, given the ownership's connections, a little easy to do. But one thing is for certain, short term, the club need to back Eddie Howe, and I'm certain they will do. They've said as much. They can't allow this exit to get in the way of that. Nixon has a very good track record, very personable, and in terms of chatting to targets, he's crucial, whether he's actually at the top of the tree long term or not. But for the next few weeks and few months, while this transfer window is open, Newcastle United need to make sure that whoever is leading the transfer charge is doing it, because this is such an important window for Newcastle United and Eddie Howe. Champions League football, they need to build a squad capable of handling that. It showed the last time they were in it that they struggled. It's a miracle that Eddie Howe has managed to get this squad to Champions League football, in my opinion. Great starting 11, but after that, really lacking in depth. And that's when Newcastle United have got to look at this summer, go out and sign 2 or 3 top quality players, as well as building a squad and adding that depth. Steve Nixon can play a massive part in that if indeed he is handed the sort of role that Paul Mitchell had, at least in the short term. But Newcastle United, hey, you could have given us a break, couldn't you? You could have given us at least a week without any breaking news. And it's going to be a busy, busy summer, because you're going to have updates on the badge, another survey coming somewhere down the line, updates on the stadium. You've got the kit release on Thursday, and then, of course, the transfer window, which we are expecting to be very, very busy. So, wow, I didn't expect this news today at all. I'm a little bit shocked by it, truth be told. There was no suggestion that it was coming down the line whatsoever. As I said earlier, it seemed like everyone was pulling in the same direction. There will be understandable concerns about what it means for Newcastle United and the summer window. Does it impact plans? But as I said, I don't think it will do. Just reading some of the comments that have been sent in to me on X, because I asked people to send in their thoughts about this news. Lee at Newcastle Fans TV says he's gobsmacked at it. Jeff says no one saw it coming. John says, I'm really disappointed. We've had two great sporting directors at the club and both left without really doing anything. The club is in the best position. And it doesn't make sense to me that he's going now. And that goes back to what I said right at the start. If you are a sporting director and you know how much money Newcastle are going to have to spend this summer, and how much money they can spend this summer, and the kind of exciting players they're going to be targeting, you want to be part of that. Maybe that suggests that the targets Mitchell wanted to go for maybe slightly different to the targets that Eddie Howe wanted to go for. Maybe that is where, as some claim, the friction was. Again, we don't know for certain. Daniel says it is worrying, most important window in years, and it's already started with discontent. We've seen how that went previously. Now, interesting there from Daniel, the discontent. Daniel, if you're watching on YouTube, do get in touch, because I'm interested to know where this discontent that you're referencing comes from, because I haven't seen any discontent. There was no public spat between Eddie Howe or Paul Mitchell. By all signs, it seems like it's an amicable agreement, mutual consent. It doesn't seem like anyone's pushed anyone out of the door. It doesn't seem like there's been any bad words spoken from those close to it. It seems like this is just the end of the ways, and it's Paul Mitchell that goes. Of course it is, because Eddie Howe's done a fantastic job this season leading Newcastle to the Carabao Cup and the Champions League. But I'm not sure about discontent. Stephen says the manager, he picks transfer targets at the end of the day. And Neil says, well, he arrived, had some beers at the stack and left. Scott says he couldn't care less. Ellis says, didn't do anything, didn't sign anyone. He says, I suppose he could be credited with helping us adhere to FFP. Banksy says, this seems planned, with it being the end of the season, but also horrifically bad timing. How can we lose a sporting director responsible for transfer activity just before the main transfer window? And given the importance of this window, I can only assume there was a big disagreement. And again, we don't know what happened. We don't know why he's gone. We don't know if there was a disagreement or not. But the rest of the questions Banksy's asking there, I can totally understand why you're asking them. And we've done so in this podcast. I'm sure when we get the chance to get some answers, we will ask those questions as well. Dave says it's very odd, to be honest, and concerning why we can't keep a man at the top. We've got Ursa 1892, sorry, saying timing is not the best unless there are deals already in motion, which you'd like to think there is. John comes back in and says, can I ask your opinion about how important a sporting director is at a football club? I think it's massively important. I think that you need that relationship between your manager, your head of recruitment, your scouting staff, and your sporting director. That is absolutely key. I think the relationship between Paul Mitchell and Eddie Howe probably didn't get off to the best of start, but it improved. And then we just need to know kind of what went on behind the scenes. Why has this come about? Why has Paul Mitchell decided on the eve of the biggest transfer window for many, many a year to leave Newcastle United? I totally get the people in the comments saying it's a little bit strange. And they're the answers to the questions that we await from Newcastle United. But yeah, sporting director is absolutely key, because they do the negotiations, but it's not just about transfers. It's other setups in the club as well. You've also obviously got the link to the women's side. But a good sporting director doesn't just cover one angle of the club, covers several angles of the club. Paul Mitchell, probably more known for his recruitment. Dan Ashworth, maybe not as much, but yeah, sporting director is absolutely crucial. And hopefully whoever they get this time around can stick with the club, can work with Eddie Howe and start to really build for the future. Clark says a little short-sighted maybe. Paul Mitchell will have been looking at long-term strategy and getting younger talent in, which is absolutely integral. Paul Mitchell will be looking 3 or 4 or 5 years down the line, but Howe won't be looking that far down the line. He's thinking the here and now. Clearly, in Clark's opinion, a clash. And it's really interesting, isn't it? Because that's what you're led to believe, that Mitchell's approach was kind of sign the young players, give them a chance to bed in. In the world of PSR, if you can sign someone for next to nothing and then sell them on later, obviously that all benefits the club, or you just get a star for a really low price. Brilliant. It's interesting what Clark says there. Of course, Eddie Howe's looking at the here and now. Of course he is, because his job entails that. He can't be thinking really beyond next season, because you just never know in football what's going to happen. His focus will be on who he can buy this summer who can instantly improve that squad. Instantly. Yes, you want to see talent coming in and you want to build for the future that way. But Eddie Howe needs players who can hit the ground running. So, if there has been a clash of the two approaches, I can understand why. Why? Because they're on different paths, aren't they? But at the end of the day, they should be working together. And again, we don't know if there has been a clash, a disagreement. From what we understand, everything has been pretty amicable. FPL House is very sad. Thought the writing was on the wall, though, the moment he stepped foot in the club. I think obviously there wasn't a working relationship with Eddie Howe and something had to give. Can we tempt Dan Ashworth back to the club? I'd have him back in a heartbeat. Interesting from FPL Howe. Not sure many of the Newcastle United fans would have Dan Ashworth back in a heartbeat. Felt a little bit betrayed by the way he upped sticks to Manchester United, and then obviously the way it's gone there. Probably hasn't painted himself in the best of lights, and now he's gone off to join the FA. So A, I wouldn't personally have him back, and B, I don't think he's going to be coming back. Neil says it sounds like because Darren Eales is leaving, he decided it's not the place for him anymore, going by what he said. Perhaps he knows who Eales' replacement is and doesn't want to work with them. Eric says from an outside perspective, there always seemed to be friction between Howe and Mitchell, and they were never going to work well together. The club need to nail their mast to one or the other, and they chose Howe. And Wayne says another window of no signings. David says promised so much, had his hands tied, really quite disappointed about this. Looked to have loads of contacts. So a little bit split, actually. A little bit split. But the bottom line is he didn't do much in Newcastle United. And maybe, yes, he was restricted by FFP. But again, it goes back to the point that this summer is then what he's, built for. This is what he's planned for this summer. So many questions on this, so many questions. And hopefully we will manage to get the answers to you guys sooner rather than later. But it goes back to one of the points I made in the original, or made earlier in the show, sorry. We can't have a vacuum here. We need to make sure Newcastle start the window really strongly, and we also need the answers to these questions, because otherwise speculation is just going to run wild, isn't it? And that's not what we want. It's not a distraction that we want ahead of such a big transfer window. But let me know your thoughts on Paul Mitchell's exit after just a year, under a year. Let me know what you think the future holds at Newcastle United in terms of a sporting director. Does a CEO have to be appointed first? Are there any names when it comes to a sporting director that you want to see? Thank you very much for tuning in. Thank you very much for listening. Always greatly appreciated. I will be back later this week with Aaron and John Gibson. We're going to do some separate episodes of a season review, 3 parts. And also there'll be a highlights package from the Newcastle United media play on the pitch experience. I went in goal. Give you a little bit of a teaser. Game of 2 halves. Had a tremendous first half in goal. Had a shocking second half. Dire. But I'm going to give the content to you real, ladies and gents. I'm not going to edit any of my mistakes out. You will see my full performance and you can make your own judgment. Would you sign me to replace Nick Pope? Given that I'm older than him, probably not. Given that my hamstrings have gone after I'm literally just parole in the box, again, probably not. But watch out for that one. It's going to be a laugh. Thank you very much for tuning in. Do it in the comments. Do it thumbs up. Do it like. Do it subscribe. Do just get involved. I really love hearing from you guys. Do it the link in the podcast description box. Take advantage of that NordVPN offer while it's still there. And I will catch you guys later this week.